Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now we have a lot of scenery. I wish I could be showing you all the time, but at the same time we're going to be having a conversation about sanda, and we'll find out what that is. But we're doing that with Richard Acosta. Mr. Acosta, thank you for making the time. We're up on the Chancellor, but let's start with the question, please. What is sanda?
Sanda is the Chinese military art form. So every country has their own military art form. China's own is sanda. It means striking knee. Comes from also the san shao, which is the more popular term. That's called striking fist. That means striking fist.
And what I find interesting is that sometimes you have versions that are for the military, and then you have some that have been turned more for competition for sport. What are some of the differences, or what are some of the things that say, okay, well, this is sanda, the distinctions from another striking art?
Another art. So in sanda, you are allowed to catch kicks. You're allowed to. You can do everything like Muay Thai can do. So you can elbow, you can knee, but you're allowed to catch kicks as well and lift the opponent up and throw them to the floor. Once they get to the floor, once their gloves touch or their knees touch, the fight is stopped and then you stand again. So you get points for putting the person on the ground or hitting them off what is known as a lei tai, which is a raised mound, and you fight on that. And if you push the guy off, you earn points that way as well.
Where you find this?
When I was in New York, I was looking for a Muay Thai school. Muay Thai was popular. We would see it on ESPN 2 o'clock in the morning, but I had no idea what Sanda was. And I found this small gym, NYKKA, New York Kickboxing Kung Fu Academy, and they said, "Hey, we do Sanda here. You know, she should try it because the first class was free." Kind of. I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And the way they explained it to me, it made so much sense. Basically, with Sanda is anything they throw at you, you're going to absorb and use against them. And I like that premise. It's a lot more thinking going on than say Muay Thai. Muay Thai is strength and there's a little bit of strategy, but not to the extent that you get in Sanda. Sanda is a total chess game.
I can imagine some people fighting. Oh, but what are you telling me about? But talk about that absorbing or that absorption of anything that someone throws at you, please, because certain traditions would look to evade. So I don't even want you to hit me, and then I come from angles that you may not be expecting. So
Right.
when you talk about absorbing, what are you talking about?
So you have that sort of evasion as well. So let's say in one aspect there's if the guy is coming at you with punches, you go under the punches, grab the legs, take them to the ground. Right? But with the absorption, a lot has to do a lot with the kicks. With the kicks, when a person kicks you, you block, you grab the kick, take them to the ground. So basically, you're on assault non-stop. When you're attacking and you're on your offense, you could just go and do what you have to do. But when you want to be active rest, you could just sit there, wait for them to reply. When they do, take them to the ground. So in that respect, Sanda is very lucrative when it comes to MMA because it's that bridge that you get between stand-up and groundwork.
And after the free class,
Hmm.
and you understood it.
Hmm.
Understanding with your mind is one thing. Understanding with your body. What was your body saying?
Yeah, I'd never done anything like this before in my life, so it was an adjustment. It was the best years of my life, though, but it was rough. It was hardest training I've ever done. Um, we had a nice solid team. It took a while for my body to adjust, but it's like anything that you do over and over. At some point, it just all clicks, and then it all started to make sense. And I became a national champion in the states in 2004.
And that's one of the things I wanted to ask about, because even like me asking, remind me of your first name, please, because I don't know you as Richard.
Right. Yeah,
I know you as Razorshin.
Razorshin, yeah.
So how do you get that name? Is it that somebody bestows it on you, you take it on yourself?
So I actually had that name before I left Trinidad. That was a name from playing football in the small goal. So
It's
I
fitting
used to
though.
like, yeah, I used to like the kick, and I didn't care what I hit. I just swing it. So razor shin cut you down. But it just translated well when it came. When we started the fight, you need a name, a nickname. So I just chose razor shin. So
And
it stuck with me.
moving from the military version to the competitive, the sporting version,
Hmm.
are there emphases on what it is you use in terms of elbows, punches, kicks? What is that like?
Um, Not really. There's basically what China did was they needed an art form that could be translated and used easily against a myriad of different fighting styles. So they took basic components of kung fu and they merged it with Western boxing styles, Muay Thai kick styles, um, basically all the techniques that we know works in fighting, and they merge them together and put with kung fu. So a lot of the moves that we use are just basically kung fu. Um, so it's not much of a disparity between the military, like what you would see in Krav Maga. Krav Maga for military is way more aggressive than but than the competition or what they would use for commercial.
Hmm.
But it's not that much difference when you talk about sanda and competition and military.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about foot position. And the reason I asked about foot position is because someone was explaining to me that some styles go together
Hmm.
better than other styles in terms of possibly Muay Thai with this other style. And part of that is just because of foot placement in terms of whether or not you have your feet facing front or you have the back foot at an angle depending on how it is you're looking to brace.
Hmm.
So with that in mind, what are some of those things that Sanda might merge a little easier with?
So that is a big. I guess it's a debate right now. Yeah, you stumble on the exact same thing because what I propose to people is stop standing at an angle. When we get to the gym, I'll explain that better. But basically, when you stand at an angle like this, like boxers, taekwondo, all these styles tell you stand at an angle makes it easier to deliver punches and evade. And I actually disagree. I think, see, okay, so I'm not really the most athletic person in terms of I'm not like a trained athlete.
Mm.
So for me to survive in a sport as fast paced and aggressive as Sanda, it all came down to my stance, where I put my feet, and my form. And that's why I believe if you just take the time and just, you know, do things the way Sanda says it, you could survive a lot of confrontations, even though you're not an adept fighter or even an athlete, because it's just lucrative. It just makes a lot of sense.
I guess part of that is also you give some, you lose some. So if
Hmm.
someone has that speed, they can afford to have to offer a smaller window or target area to the opponent
Mm.
because they have more speed to move where they want, even though that turn, that angle might have them predicated to go in one direction.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are flatter, you might have a larger window, but it also allows you the opportunity to move in different ways
Hmm.
that you might even, the opponent mightn't even be expecting. We're speaking with Richard Razorshin Acosta. We are up on the Lady Chancellor, and stay with us. We're going to be talking some more about Sanda when we return. Welcome back. I'm sweating from sun before I start sweating from fear. We're talking with Richard Razorshin Acosta. We're speaking about Sanda up on the Lady Chancellor Hill. But looking at that question in terms of that bigger target, while giving you the ability to move to either side versus a smaller target because you kind of side on whether or not you want to talk about Philly shell in boxing or just that almost like a knife stance in karate. Um, when you say it allows you more, even though you may not be hyper athletic, explain that a little more, thanks.
Okay. When in the sanda stance, you're basically a tripod. You have your front leg, back leg. The back leg is always pushing forward to give you that, to counter any force that you're getting from the front. And you have your front leg in just a little turned in so that it provides stability because you're getting forces going to land from the sides and front. And in the case of takedowns, coming from underneath. The best way to oppose all those forces to have everything pointing forward. If that is askew in any way, you're going to find that your ability to counteract those forces diminishes rapidly, especially in a fight situation or a fast-paced fight situation where things are coming at you in different directions, and it's the stuff you don't see is the stuff you're going to get you. So if you're in a lot of times I've been in fights where I've been blacked out. I have no idea where I was. You get a shot that got through, and you just see black. But because of my stance, I was allowed to recover in like a split second. You come back, and then you're back in the fight. But you can't get that if your stance is off, even by a little bit.
And even in terms of like those body mechanics, one of the things that I would have heard you speak about is the difference in moving legs specifically, the difference in trying to move your entire leg versus, I guess, kind of moving a hip.
Right. So coming from the Muay Thai, because they're the ones basically I think really perfected it or at least publicized it, is that you use your core to propel the limbs forward. The limbs get exhausted, especially legs, the largest muscles, are in the legs, blood vessels, everything. If you try to work that individually, it's gonna go dead. Even with boxing, if you try to just move your arms, they're going to die. So instead, you use your shoulders and hips to propel the larger limbs, and that way conserve energy. So it increases your output by 100% just by using that body mechanics. So Muay Thai, they swing the hip first and the leg follows. That way, you don't use any muscle that much to propel the kick forward. And same thing with boxing. You use your shoulders and your feet to throw the punch forward. And that way, your arms don't get, because this is the most complex joint. It gets fatigued really quickly.
How, how pervasive, prevalent, how many people do sanda in Trinidad and Tobago? Because I'd hear Muay Thai, I'd hear karate, I'd hear other striking discipline, boxing even, but I don't necessarily hear that much about sanda.
Yeah, it's not a very popular sport just because it doesn't get much, kind of exposure on this side of the world due to America and their relations with China. China is a different story, obviously. But here and even in the US, it's a small community, and you see it every year. There's a Dragon Cup, um, and usually have it either in Central or in UE. And you see a few people, especially people who practice kung fu and those arts, come together and they merge it with a grappling tournament as well. But the people who actually do like pure sanda is very very tiny, very very small pool.
And with that though, how do people, is it that people who are doing something as like MMA and they hear, hey, it have this fellow called Razorshin, he have a striking discipline, it'll help up your game. How do people reach out to you, access, engage? What is that process like?
Usually people get to me on Instagram. Instagram basically I have videos up. I have training videos with the guys at HitFit, Joash Walkins, and basically they just find me there. It seems to be the best place for it.
If you're using this just for training, where do you see it start to manifest? So sometimes you could look at somebody and say, that person looks like a swimmer. This person looks like a runner. Is there a type of body that working with sanda or being involved in sanda, one, the type of body that is better suited for it, or it gives you natural advantages, and two, the type of body that you develop?
No, I don't think there's anything that could really tell. Just with like most, the only sport I know that has any real tell is wrestling and jiu-jitsu. The cauliflower
Cauliflower
ears.
ears?
That's basically it. Though any other fighting sport, I don't think they have really, and that's the beauty about fighting. Fighting humbles you because one of my training brothers in New York, he was from Iran. He was 6'2", and he's only 190 pounds, but he's solid. But he looked like an average guy. But you had no idea that guy could destroy you in seconds. And that basically keeps you humble because you don't know who really is a threat out there in the world. You know, you could see a guy who's chubby looking out of it, but he could put you down. Or you could see a guy who's like small, not really big in frame. We have a guy called the Dagger, Donnell Phillips. He, the guy is a monster, you know. So that's the beauty of fighting. You never know, so you always treat everybody the same.
And one of the reasons that we're up here on Chancellor Hill is that you do training. What are some of the types of training that would go into building for Sando, or just building for the other clientele that you have that would want to have Sanda in the toolkit?
Right. So for the hobbyists, people who just trying to stay in shape and stay fit, it's all about increasing your cardio and your output while you're totally depleted. It's all about breaking you down to build you up. So we have exercises where the main thing is the hill sprint. We come straight up the hill, and then at the top of the hill, you go straight into some sort of exercise, or we use like push-ups or something, or you come straight up the hill into technique drills. All that is to simulate how you would feel in a fight situation where, you're totally broken, you're tired, but the guy is still there coming at you. You still have to perform. And for those who are in competition, it's all about Megadeth. It's all about that Megadeth. It's all about breaking you down, breaking you down, breaking you down until you're reborn.
You know what I do appreciate? I do appreciate that smile that you... The man have a kind of smile with Megadeth. But that makes me want to ask as well though, how much of it is mental? Because you spoke about it like chess and chess match and thinking game, and there's so much things that go on as opposed to just physical. But when you say is really mental, what are some of those factors that are coming into play?
Um, well, for one, in terms of mental, is your resilience. At what point you're gonna say, I can't take anymore, I'm done. The guys that make it in this sport are the guys who never quit. They just never die. In terms of mental, um, in strategy, you are trying to get your opponent. You're always trying to trap them. You're always trying to lure them into some sort of trap by putting pressure on them, knowing they will react a certain way, and then you capitalize on either the mistake they make or the form or technique that they use and choose to attack you with. So it's always, even when you're defensive, you're on an offensive game plan there. So in that realm, it's a lot going on mentally. You always have to be. You can't lapse. You can't. Your mind can't be somewhere else. You can't be thinking about other things. You always have to be focused on your target, 100% of the time.
Well, I don't know if I lapse by saying that I'm going to try this thing out. But some people might find resilience, I might find religion, I don't know. But we want to thank you very much for the time. And we're actually going for a session now. But to end this one, on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. We've been speaking with Richard Acosta. Thank you so much for joining us.